Turn on the garage lights. Hey guys, this is Dan with Gears and Gadgets. Thanks for tuning in. Today we are going to be doing an installation of the AMP Research PowerSteps on my 2021 Ford F-150.
Yep, that's me.
That escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast.
Who needs a razor blade? You have a ceiling fan. Seems okay. So I'm going to jump in real quick and say this is not my typical installation video, mainly because these AMP PowerSteps are not supposed to fit on the 2021 Ford F-150 hybrid PowerBoost. They fit, I believe, on every other version of this truck, but the PowerBoost is unique because it has a battery in the back for the hybrid system, which has some coolant lines that run along the frame rails, and they do interfere with the installation. So I want to thank the sponsor of this video, realtruck.com, for sending these running boards out, knowing that they would not fit, and basically just trusting that I would go through the process of the installation and share that with you guys, good, bad, or indifferent. So again, big shout out to realtruck.com. I will link them in the description down below. Let's talk about why I didn't go with the OEM power running boards. When I first actually, before ordering my truck, went to the dealership to look at the 21s with the new model year, the first one I looked at actually had the PowerSteps. When I opened the door, I saw how they dropped out, and they didn't seem different than the regular static running boards that come on the trucks. They were really high up to the sill, didn't seem to drop down or even present out far enough from the truck to make it worth the expense to me to pay for the OEM solution. Now, I was familiar with AMP PowerSteps from my previous trucks. I've worked with these guys for a long time. Love the products, never had any problems. I see people who comment, oh, how do they work in the snow? I had them in Buffalo for quite a while. Never had a problem with them freezing up, and that was running the regular AMP PowerStep that just has one motor and then an idler arm. Now these that I'm installing today actually have 2 motors per side, so 4 motors total, just a more robust, durable running board setup. So the reason why I'm coming to basically talk through this installation in the garage after it was done was because I really didn't know what I was doing, and I'm not afraid of saying that. What you're watching is somebody just trying to figure it out in their garage. It's a main reason why I started this channel, is I just like tinkering with things and kind of figuring it out. Maybe a change of plans. This seems like more work than maybe needs to happen. I always like to pull everything out of the boxes, lay it out on the table the best I possibly can. It makes installation so much easier when you can just lay everything out, have it all organized, and then jump into that install. Let's clean up all these boxes. Much better. So these are the arms. We have the motors here, which we'll have to connect to that. And the reason why these don't fit this truck is because these motors theoretically should be hitting some wiring that's up along the frame rail. We'll have to take a look at that. Wiring harness, all the hardware, and then of course, the running board. Really nice gritty texture here. Certainly not going to slip a boot off of that by no means. So before I got into installing these, obviously you have to pull off the OEM running boards. Very simple process, just a matter of a few bolts. The board pulls right off, and then the brackets drop off as well. First step was to mock it up and see where is the problem, where is the conflict, because I knew based on some forums and also the fact that AMP says they don't fit, where is it going to be a conflict?
Guess you guys aren't ready for that yet.
Rear, no problem. Okay.
Okay.
No problems until I got to the front passenger side, and that is where you have some stainless steel lines that I believe are coolant lines that run to the hybrid battery pack that is in the rear of the truck. These lines do hit the motor. Now, reading through some forums, I did see somebody had mentioned that they had re-indexed the motor, and that was the first thing I was going to try. So pulled this thing apart and started looking at maybe trying to pull out and drill out a new hole. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna take this motor, which is currently sitting like this, and then it is actually hitting up in this area here. We're just gonna take this plate and shift it up so that the motor sits more straight up and down and doesn't actually contact those lines. There is a pin on the back side here. I just need to back that out. It's a screw, drill a new hole in this so I can kind of pull it up. At least that's the theory that I'm running with. See See how this goes. Remove this retaining ring, which will probably shoot across the garage. Got it. Interesting side note, this little retaining clip is actually the inspiration for the G's in the logo. That is my logo. Maybe a change of plans. This seems like more work than maybe needs to happen. So after wrestling with that for a few moments, I decided to just mock it back up again and see how does this really interfere with those lines? Because the next option is to just deal with it. So I looked at it, kind of put it all back together. I've watched a lot of videos about battery pack cooling. It's not the same as engine cooling. It doesn't get nearly as hot, doesn't have the same flow rates. It's really just running fluid to that battery to maintain that temperature. It's definitely critical. You don't want to spring a leak or anything like that. But it didn't seem as critical of monkeying around actual engine coolant lines. I also looked down the coolant lines running to the battery and saw that there was a rubber block or a bushing that's holding between two different lines. So my thought was, why don't I just create my own barrier between the motor and the lines so that there's not any metal to metal contact. With that, I remembered I had this Teflon tape sitting on my toolbox. So I grabbed that, wrapped the lines, and then I also had this Flex Seal tape sitting in my toolbox as well from a previous project. So I grabbed that and decided to use the Flex Seal tape on the top of the motor to create a little bit of a barrier, and then also having the Teflon tape around the line. So anywhere that it touches, it's not metal to metal contact, and I'm okay with that. Drop in the comments down below what you think. Is that going to be a problem long term? I will keep an eye on it. I don't anticipate any problems. That's why I did it that way. Now, when I decided that was the path I was going to take, installation of these is actually pretty straightforward. I would say if you didn't have to monkey around with trying to figure out that one conflict process, you could probably get this job done in the matter of 3-4 hours, somewhere in that range. Adding in the trial and error troubleshooting process was more of pretty much a day-long process. With that, installing these things, very easy. You just pop that bracket up on the same OEM mount that the regular running boards came off of. You mount the motors up, torque them down. Then it's a matter of running your wire harnesses, getting everything plumbed in the way you want it. It's really easy just running those wire harnesses down through the wheel well over to the locations where the motors are, zip tie that wire harness up. And once you have that all plugged in, then that's when I take to the engine bay, disconnect the battery. With these PowerBoosts, and I believe actually I want to say all F-150s now, or at least the ones with the generator setup, there actually is an auxiliary battery. You have to disconnect that rear battery as well, and then that kills the 12-volt system. Then you can actually run the wire harness up to the OBD2 port connector. There are 2 taps that are required to be made in order to get these running boards working, and that was one of the problems that I ran into. Again, this is what happens when you're dealing with installing things on vehicles that are not technically supported, is you have to troubleshoot through some things in order to make it work. So the instructions actually tell you to utilize a white with green stripe, and you attach the blue wire to that, which was fine. But then they tell you to do a green with a blue stripe to attach the white wire, and that's why we ran into a problem. There was not a green with a white stripe. I started kind of guessing at what they meant by that, and went through, I could not get these steps to work to save my life. After many hours of monkeying with these wires, I took back to the forums, which I should have done much sooner, and found the solution. And what it was just to go to the green wire, and then everything worked out just fine. Now, because I made several taps trying to test out which wire I needed, of course, all of these wires now had these little tiny pinholes from those posi taps. I could have left it alone, mainly thinking that the actual wires themselves going into the harness connector have a little bit of exposed wire anyways at the tail end. So I don't think it was a problem to just leave those little pinholes from the taps alone. But I think probably more out of concern for the comments here on the YouTube channel, I did buy some liquid tape and kind of dabbed it on there to seal up those wires, because these trucks are incredibly complex now with the wiring, and I just wanted to alleviate that from being a potential maybe interference issue or wire harness problem. Of course, these trucks, again, incredibly complex. So I did just kind of seal that up a little bit. And I did mention at the unboxing about the additional switch that I had purchased for manually overriding the steps. Now this I actually bought separate, is a switch that you can manually put the steps up or down, override them. That I just installed on the driver's side, so underneath by the left knee, essentially, where you have the same switch for the power pedals. Just made sense to have the adjustment for the pedals and then the running boards right there with each other, and that's where I decided to run that. So now that we've gone through the installation, everything's working, these things are absolutely awesome. I'm going to address the comments that I've seen on videos I've done with these in the past about, like, why would you spend so much money on running boards? And it's a lot of times, I know those comments are coming from people that are trying to be more frugal towards their truck builds, and they're kind of projecting out on other people who decide that they do want to go this route. Let's talk about the real reasons why. So first and foremost, with trucks, the comments of people that saying you shouldn't need running boards to get in a truck, kind of, I guess, the machismo of pickup trucks, it's absurd. Anybody who's spent time utilizing their pickup trucks on job sites, and I'm talking about nice pickup trucks, not beaters. If you have a work truck that's a dedicated work truck, you don't really care about getting mud on the floor mats, or even if you have even better, vinyl floors where you're not actually dealing with carpets, those kinds of things. But when you start talking about a daily driver truck, I always found having any kind of running board as a way to kick off the mud on your boots just helps keep the interior nicer, which is what I want to do with a nicer pickup truck. The next concern is seat bolsters. Seat bolsters on pickup trucks are an incredibly common failure point. You see it in cars as well, but more so on pickup trucks. And that's because when you are getting out of a pickup truck, you have a further distance to get to the ground, so you end up just dragging your rear across that seat, and it creates a ton of wear and tear on that surface. So with a good set of running boards where it actually drops and is somewhere halfway midpoint between truck and pavement, it gives you a nice place to set your foot, step up off of the seat, and then onto the ground, then protecting, or helping protect the interior. Then the next concern is just family. So I have a 6-year-old, so for her to get in and out of the vehicle without the running boards, I don't think she'd be able to do it without me lifting her in and out of the vehicle. But with the running boards, she can comfortably and safely get in and out of the vehicle. And my wife appreciates them as well. And last but not least, resale value. I know that anybody that has seen the AMP Research PowerSteps on my truck absolutely loves them. It's like, for some reason, a very interesting talking point. And I think it's because it's kind of like a spoiled feature, same as like the power tailgate. A lot of people look at it like, why would you need that? And then the moment they interact with them, they're like, oh yeah, okay, I get it. But in my opinion, if you can swing it, I highly recommend the AMP Research PowerSteps. I've never had a failure with them, not even one time. They've never even had any sort of hiccup. You open the door, they drop, you close the door, they pull up. Very simple and works 100% of the time. So with that, guys, thank you very much for tuning in. If this is your first time tuning in, please hit that subscribe button down below. Remember, affiliate links for Real Truck in the description down below, and I will see you guys next time.